When people talk about games, or I guess any type of media, I think people tend to exaggerate. When people say things like, this is the best movie of all time, or this is the worst video game in history, they don't really mean that. How can they? That's a huge claim. I specifically want to focus in on the whole worst video game of all time thing. There are thousands of games out there, so to label one as the single worst game of them all means the thing must be damn near unplayable. But so often I hear people call some games the absolute worst, and I just can't take those statements seriously. I don't believe them. I remember once hearing someone call Sonic 06 the worst game of all time, and sure, it's pretty bad, but it's not so bad to the point where literally every other game in existence is better. Maybe I just have crushingly low standards, but these bad games are never as bad as people make them seem. If you search up most worstest bad video game on Google, you'll see lots of articles from various publications listing games that they believe to be the worst in the industry's history, and there are a handful of games that pop up quite frequently. One of them is a 3D platformer released in 1996 for the original PlayStation. No, not that one. I'm talking about Bubsy 3D. And let's just take a look at what some of these publications have to say about Bubsy 3D. The Guardian says that this game made Bubsy a symbol for technological disaster, with its drunkenly uncontrollable camera and a 3D engine so underpowered it could barely render its own failure. BossLevelGamer.com says that you know a game is bad when the best part about it is the option to mute the main character. Bubsy's voice acting is awful, the controls are dreadfully tanky, and the game's art design is bland and uninspired. Even Wikipedia felt like it needed to step in and say how bad it was. It even went as far as the creator of the Bubsy series saying that Bubsy 3D was his biggest failure. Harsh words, very harsh words indeed. But despite the unanimous agreement that Bubsy 3D is that terrible, I just didn't believe it. I couldn't just accept this general consensus that it was one of the worst games of all time. There's no way it could be that awful. I just had to see it for myself. So I played Bubsy 3D. I went into it thinking, how bad can it be? I've played it and holy shit. I would like to formally and sincerely apologize to all the people whose opinions I doubted and dismissed. You weren't exaggerating, you were right all along. Bubsy 3D is fucking terrible to the point where I don't even know where to start. I guess I'll start at the start. The game opens with a cutscene that made me want to turn it off. It's a terrible opening. There is a plot, but I don't know what it is. Admittedly, I was too distracted by the horrible voices, disgusting characters, and bizarre setting to really take it in. Not a good first impression. The game had been on for, 15 seconds? And I was already asking myself, is this happening or am I just on LSD? But in all honesty, I wasn't here for a cinematic masterpiece of an opening cutscene. I didn't really care, I just wanted to see the game. So I entered the first level, Claws for Alarm, and oh my fucking god. Even looking at it now, I'm speechless. It only took me about 2 minutes to identify the big issues Bubsy 3D has. Literally only 2 minutes. After 120 seconds of playing the first level, I understood completely why this game is so viscerally hated. The name Claws for Alarm could not be any more fitting. My first observation was instant. The very moment the first level loaded, I saw and heard what I can only describe as an abomination. Let me give you an accurate reenactment of what I said and how I said it in that moment. Jesus Christ. I could not believe what I was witnessing. The visuals and music in this game are absolutely disgusting. The levels are just a random assembly of brightly coloured squares, as if someone had just spilled a bunch of Dulux paint swatches on the floor. It was genuinely difficult to look at. There's hardly any detail, everything looks the same. It's so bad that the levels have giant floating arrows lying around to tell you where to go, because you wouldn't be able to tell otherwise. And then the music. It actually gave me a headache. I get what they were going for with it. It's supposed to be some sort of whimsical, alien-themed, old-school Saturday morning cartoon soundtrack, but it ended up being, well, shit. I can actually feel the music weighing down on my brain and chipping away at my soul. It's like the musical equivalent of Chinese water torture. I don't think music in video games is supposed to be like that. It probably wouldn't be as bad if they removed the droning space noise. I think that's doing the damage here. But even without that, it still wouldn't be good music. The second thing I noticed happened shortly after that. Bubsy controls terribly in pretty much every way you can think of. Some of the things they got wrong are ridiculous. Things that you wouldn't even consider to be things are completely botched in this game. For example, moving to the left or right. In most games, what you're able to do is just move to the left or right, and the character you're controlling will move to the left or to the right. In Bubsy 3D, pressing the left and right buttons turns Bubsy around. He doesn't move, he turns the direction he's facing. Bubsy cannot move left or right. He can only move forwards and backwards. If you want to turn left or right, you have to either stop moving and stand still, turn the way he faces, then run forwards, or you can move the direction he's facing while running, which will take at least a few seconds before he's facing the direction you want to go in. I don't get it. How can you get the most basic of movement so wildly wrong? This is a 3D platformer, but they've basically given Bubsy 2D movement. Like, what? Bubsy can also jump. Jumping is very awkward and forces the camera to sit at a certain angle, so it's hard to tell where you're going to land. Jumping is a pretty fundamental part of platformers, so that's a very worrying sign. And then you have attacking. Bubsy can jump on enemies, but as I said, it's hard to tell where you're going to land, so it's not very reliable as an attack. So what other options do you have? Bubsy must have some kind of regular attack, right? No, not really. Bubsy does have one method of attacking. If you approach an atom while holding square, you can pick up the atom and throw it at an enemy. Bubsy cannot attack without atoms present, and this is fucking stupid because atoms are the standard collectible. You're supposed to be picking them up, the game even tells you that. Why would you not give Bubsy a standard attack? Why would you make him attack using collectibles? It's like if Mario was only able to defeat enemies by throwing coins. It doesn't make any sense. And what makes it worse is that it relies on the terrible camera controls. There was a power-up I picked up that allowed Bubsy to shoot a few atoms at will, but from my understanding you can't normally do that. That's ridiculous. And then Bubsy himself. As if they couldn't make an already insufferable game any more insufferable. This walking turd they call Bubsy Bobcat has got to be the most obnoxious video game character of all time. Everything he says is like nails on a chalkboard. I cannot stand him. He's not funny, he's not cheeky, he's not interesting, his voice is irritating, he doesn't have anything good to say, he's the most unlikable video game character I've ever seen.
I knew I should have taken that left turn at Uranus! Was it something I said? What could possibly go wrong?
I'd just like to remind you that all of this shit happened 2 minutes into the game. I can't emphasize enough how much of a dumpster fire this game is. But surely this can't be it. There must be something decent this game has to offer. There's no way a team of game developers would be satisfied releasing a game this bad, right? I had to see more. So I kept on going. And what did I see? Ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between, strap in, because I'm about to tell you the story of the second level, Claustrophobic. So I started wandering around a giant field that looked like the periodic table, and immediately I had no idea where I was supposed to go. And because the draw distance was so bad, I couldn't see what was off in the distance, so I tried running around to look for arrows in the hopes that they would lead me in the right direction. I found some, and following them led me into a corner with what I assume is supposed to be a spinning fan, next to an arrow pointing upwards. So naturally I assumed, oh okay, this fan is going to lift me up to a platform or something. So I tried jumping on it, expecting it to blow me up, but instead I landed on it and took damage. It was at that point that Bubsy thought it would be helpful to say, "Don't quit your day job!" So I decided, okay, I can't go this way yet, there must be something else I have to do first. Maybe I can find a switch or something. So I went off to explore. Not an easy task, since everything looks the fucking same. Upon returning to where I started, I noticed some mid-air platforms and wondered if that was where I was supposed to go. So with my clumsy, awkward controls, I traversed the mid-air platforms and ended up on top of a hill and found a rocket. Oh yeah, there are collectibles in this game, 2 rockets in every level, but honestly, I couldn't give a shit. Normally my completionist instinct would kick in, but it was not in the mood. I wonder why. Since there was nothing else on the hill, I jumped down to the ground and ended up at the very same corner I was stuck at before. So I basically took a massive detour and ended up in the same place. I thought to myself, no, that can't be right, I must have missed something. So I went back and pretty much ran in circles for about 3 minutes, trying to find something I hadn't seen yet, and I ended up dying to a random enemy. The next 2 minutes I spent trying to cross those mid-air platforms again, but because of the terrible controls, Bubsy kept falling off the side. Keep in mind, this is all happening while the terrible music is chipping away at my sanity. I then ended up dying to a random enemy under said platforms that attacked me every time I fell off. The platforms once again led to bugger all, so I went back to the dead-end corner and tried jumping at the fan again. The fan killed me. I did see another fan lying around before the one in the corner, maybe that has something to do with it? I tried jumping at that one too, and took damage. I was all out of ideas, so I resorted to literally just running around aimlessly hoping that something would happen. Because I didn't know what to do. I followed the arrows, but they led me to a dead end. I tried not following the arrows, but there was nothing there. What do I do? I started to think, what if I tried to destroy the fan somehow? I approached an atom and tried to shoot the fan with it. The atom sailed right over the fan and hit a wall, and then I died somehow. I wasn't hit by anything, there was no indication that I took damage. Bubsy just decided he had enough and self-destructed. And honestly, if I were him, I'd probably do the same. This is level 2, and I'm completely stumped. It should not be this confusing. I had been playing this level for 15 minutes at this point, and I just had no idea what I was meant to be doing. I was starting to think that maybe I was the idiot in this situation and not the game. And we can't be having that, now can we? Something here is terribly wrong. I mean, no shit, but I had to figure out what it was. I can't let level 2 of fucking Bubsy defeat me. After I spent a few minutes calling my mummy for emotional support, I found a quiet spot to myself to play around with the controls. Maybe Bubsy has a move I just missed. I knew that X and triangle were both jump, circle was crouch, square was for shooting atoms, and the directional buttons were for Bubsy's shitty bastard movement. I discovered that holding the left trigger lets you move the camera without moving Bubsy, so you can get a good look at his hideous face, but doing so actually showed me where the end of the level was. It was literally right above the fan in the corner. I have been under the exit this whole time, but how the fuck do I get up there? And that's when I discovered it. Remember when I said X and triangle were both jump? Well, that is true. If you jump with X, Bubsy will jump and then land. But guess fucking what? If you jump with triangle, Bubsy will glide in the air. I know, Bubsy can glide with triangle. It looked like both X and triangle did the same jump, but no, it turns out you can glide with triangle. They're both different. Who'd have guessed? Certainly not me. It took me nearly 20 minutes to figure that out. How funny is that? Isn't that just wonderful? You know what would have been even more wonderful? If the game had fucking told me that. That's pretty useful information, don't you think? Where was that 20 minutes ago, hey? Where was it? Fuckheads! Ahem. Surely that gives you a pretty good idea of what it's like playing Bubsy 3D. And this is only the second level. It's torture. The third level was also pretty terrible. It had a water hazard underneath some mid-air platforms, but if you're even slightly over the edge of said platform, Bubsy will just kill himself. For no reason. You could at least let me fall in, you bastard. This game also has boss fights. I fought the first one and it is dog shit. Luckily I figured out the glide mechanic, or I never would have beaten this boss. For this boss you need to use the updraft caused by the boss's attacks to glide over and land on its head. Which would be fine, but like I keep saying, the controls are terrible, and this boss requires accuracy and camera control that this game does not let you have. The level after the boss, Missing Links, is my favourite, I've decided. Why? Well, it's an underwater level. In most platformers, underwater levels are horrendous and usually worse than the regular gameplay. In Bubsy 3D, the underwater level is still horrendous, but it's actually better than the regular gameplay. This is because most of the obstacles and enemies in this level are on the floor, but because you can swim in this level, you can just go over all the bullshit and pretty much skip the level. And that's why it's my favourite level in the game. You don't have to play it. Oh, by the way, I stopped playing after this level. I couldn't take it anymore, I had to stop. I am still stunned by how terrible this game is. All those reviewers and journalists, and even the game's creator, said it was one of the worst games ever made, and I should have listened. It is atrocious. I didn't expect it to be in any way good when I played it, but I did think I would be able to at least enjoy it on an ironic level. I'm struggling to articulate how this game made me feel. I take notes on games as I play them for videos like this, and I think the final note that I wrote is the closest I'm going to get to an accurate explanation of what I think of this game, and I think that's what I'll end on. Here is what I wrote. I cannot bring myself to keep playing this game. It expects you to do things quickly, which is impossible with the controls you're given. The controls are terrible. The levels are terrible. The game sounds terrible. As a character, Bubsy is terrible. I genuinely hate this game. Genuinely the worst game I've ever played. Very rarely do I quit a game because of how bad it is. I usually soldier on until the very end, but this game defeated me. I cannot sit through it any longer. Fuck Bubsy 3D.